Hamilton's Monza weekend didn't collapse in a single corner. It unfolded lap by lap, each one sketching the same paradox. A driver with 44 victories at circuits that reward late braking and smooth exits, now forced to relearn his instincts. The Ferrari SF-25 demanded a style that Hamilton himself admitted feels alien, and the data showed it. Take lap 12. Through the Variante della Roggia chicane, Hamilton's minimum speed was 3 km/h lower than Leclerc's, his throttle trace jagged where the Monegasques looked fluid. By lap 31, the pattern had shifted. Hamilton was now carrying 2 km/h more than Leclerc through Lesmo 2, and the throttle application curve had smoothed into something resembling confidence. That progression isn't car evolution, it's human adaptation in real time. Hamilton was teaching himself to obey the SF-25's quirks, corner by corner, sector by sector. For Ferrari, that is both a gift and a warning. The gift, Hamilton's ability to extract more pace the longer a race runs, turning discomfort into speed. The warning, he is still not at one with the car after 16 Grands Prix, which suggests the SF-25 requires compromise rather than synergy. That matters in a title fight. Drivers like Verstappen and Norris are exploiting cars that fit their natural styles from lap 1. Hamilton, meanwhile, is losing tenths early, clawing them back later, but only when the race has already defined its rhythm. It's why his 6th place at Monza wasn't a disaster, but it wasn't salvation either. He closed the gap to Leclerc over the distance, yet the damage was done in qualifying and the opening stints. Ferrari knows championships aren't won with end-of-race confidence. They're won with baseline comfort that lets you attack from lights out. And here lies the cliffhanger. If Hamilton can only unlock performance lap by lap, what does that say about Ferrari's fundamental design philosophy? And whether they've built a car that is teaching its driver rather than empowering him? The truth is, Hamilton isn't fighting himself. He's fighting Ferrari's philosophy. The SF-25 is not an easy car to bend into a natural rhythm because it wasn't built to flatter drivers who lean on instinct. It was built around stability compromises that Ferrari hoped would mask deeper weaknesses. And at Monza, the architecture of that compromise became clear. On paper, the SF-25's strength should be its high-speed balance. The numbers back it. Ferrari carried an average of 6 km/h more than McLaren through Ascari across the weekend. But to achieve that, they shifted aero-load heavily toward the front axle. That means the rear tyres are not locked down. They're floating in the grey zone, where braking stability is fragile, traction is inconsistent, and the car demands micro-adjustments. This is why Hamilton describes the style as alien. His Mercedes years trained him to trail brake late, rotate cleanly, and fire out of corners on a platform that was predictable. Ferrari's SF-25 punishes that instinct. The driver who leans too hard on rear stability will slide, lose DG margin, and watch lap times unravel. So instead, Hamilton must brake earlier, ease steering input, and bleed power progressively. A rhythm that looks cautious on telemetry, but is actually the only way to survive. The irony? Charles Leclerc has spent 6 seasons inside Ferrari learning these exact compromises. His muscle memory is tuned to the SF-25's nervous rear end. Hamilton is playing catch-up, not because he's slower, but because he's unlearning 12 years of Mercedes-specific habits. And in F1, adaptation curves cost points. The cliffhanger is this. Ferrari's choice to design a car that requires adaptation rather than rewards instinct might explain their flashes of brilliance and their chronic inconsistency. Which raises the real question. Did Ferrari build a car for the championship, or a car that ensures every weekend feels like a firefight? Adaptation is a skill Hamilton has always carried, but adaptation at 40 years old, after more than a decade in machinery sculpted to his strengths, is not the same as adaptation at 25. At Monza, the progression was clear. Every lap built confidence, every stint looked stronger than the one before. Yet across the season, the trend has been the reverse. Each weekend starts with hesitation, frustration, and a gap to Leclerc. And only when the lights go out does Hamilton claw himself back into contention. The numbers illustrate the contradiction. In qualifying across the last 6 Grands Prix, Hamilton has trailed Leclerc by an average of 0.21 seconds. Yet in race pace simulations, that gap compresses to 0.05 seconds, sometimes flipping in Hamilton's favour by the final stint. This is not a driver short of speed. It's a driver losing rhythm when it matters most. and only regaining it once the weekend is already half lost. That cycle takes a psychological toll. Confidence in Formula One is not a linear graph, it's a curve with brutal swings. Hamilton's curve within a race is steeply positive. He gets faster and faster, as he described. But across a season, the pattern is draining. Every Friday, the wall looks taller. Every Saturday, the stopwatch punishes hesitation. And by Sunday evening, the relief of progress comes laced with frustration. Why did it take so long to get there? This is why Hamilton sits 6th in the drivers' standings, 46 points behind Leclerc. The championship mathematics don't lie. If Hamilton had converted just 2 of those qualifying deficits into front row starts, the swing could already be worth 12 to 15 points. Multiply that across a season, and Ferrari's internal order might look very different. The cliffhanger is this: if Hamilton's confidence resets every Friday, how sustainable is this learning curve across 24 races? Because as the 2026 regulations loom, the question isn't just whether he can adapt, it's whether his career can withstand the mental reset required to start over every single weekend. Hamilton's quiet hope is that the 2026 regulations will give him back what Ferrari has taken away, a car that feels like an extension of his instincts, rather than an enemy to be managed. And in many ways, the rulebook is trending in his favour. Start with weight. The new cars will be 30 kilograms lighter, trimmed down from the bulk that has defined the ground effect era. That matters for Hamilton because lighter cars respond more predictably to steering input. Under Mercedes, he thrived on precision. Brake later, rotate decisively, fire out clean. In a 30-kilogram lighter Ferrari, that style could return from exile. Then there's aerodynamics. The end of drag reduction system, DRS, and the introduction of active aero on both front and rear wings fundamentally rewrites racing dynamics. Instead of forcing the driver to adapt to fixed downforce balance, the car will adapt moment to moment. That favours Hamilton's greatest strength, reading grip levels before anyone else. If Ferrari nails its active aero system, Hamilton's sensitivity could be worth tenths every lap, because he won't be fighting a static balance, he'll be orchestrating a moving one. The tyres will change too. 25mm narrower at the front, 30 at the rear. That means sharper turn-in, but less margin for traction. Again, this tilts toward Hamilton. His career has been defined by conserving rear tyres better than rivals, stretching stints when others crumble. In a world where rear grip is reduced, that skill becomes gold dust. And finally, power units. A major increase in electrical deployment means drivers will manage not just throttle, but energy release strategies. For Hamilton, who has always excelled in lifting and coasting without hemorrhaging time, this could be another lever to exploit. Combine that with fully sustainable biofuel ICES, and the entire power delivery profile will feel different. Less brutal torque spike, more linear deployment. The cliffhanger is this: while Hamilton dreams of a car that fits him again, the regulations are neutral tools. If Ferrari misinterprets them, he could find himself locked into another cycle of alien adaptation, which raises the pressing question: is Maranello preparing to design for Hamilton's style or for Leclerc's continuity? Every adaptation story eventually collides with the points table. For Hamilton, the mathematics paint a picture sharper than any driver debrief. After Monza, he sits 6th in the standings, 46 points behind Charles Leclerc, and a staggering 112 behind Verstappen. That is not just a gap in results, it's a reflection of the cost of discomfort. Look at qualifying. Across the last 8 races, Hamilton has averaged P7 on the grid. Leclerc, by contrast, has averaged P4. On paper, that's just 3 positions. In reality, those 3 grid spots translate into an average points swing of nearly 5 per race, because starting ahead of the midfield chaos creates clean air, while starting behind multiplies the risks of traffic, undercuts, and safety car timing. Over 8 races, that's a swing of 40 points. The gap to Leclerc, he explained. But it isn't just about Hamilton versus Leclerc. It's about Ferrari versus the rest. McLaren's consistency has turned them into the new disruptors. Norris has scored in 12 consecutive races, averaging 14.2 points per weekend. Hamilton, over the same stretch, has averaged 7.8. That's not a driver deficit, it's a systems deficit. Ferrari's inability to give Hamilton a baseline he can trust means the team's second car is underperforming by nearly half the points yield of their rivals. And here's where the title fight sharpens into focus. Verstappen is pulling clear at the top, but Red Bull's margin is not invulnerable. If Ferrari were extracting full potential from both drivers, they'd be 27 points closer in the constructors' standings, close enough to keep McLaren behind, and close enough to exploit a Red Bull stumble. Instead, Ferrari are splitting resources between Leclerc's stability and Hamilton's adaptation, which means the championship math is slipping away even before the regulations reset. The cliffhanger is this. If Hamilton's struggle is costing Ferrari 50 points across a season, at what point does Maranello stop framing it as adaptation and start framing it as a strategic liability in a title fight where every swing matters? Lewis Hamilton is not the first great to find himself wrestling with machinery that refuses to bend. Formula One history is filled with champions forced into reinvention, some who conquered it, others who never escaped. And Ferrari has lived both sides of that story. Take Michael Schumacher in 1996. He left Benetton as a double world champion, arriving in Maranello to a car that was fast on paper but unstable in reality. The F310 demanded a driving style that chewed rear tyres and punished aggression. Schumacher's adaptation curve was brutal. 3 wins but 9 retirements. Yet across 4 seasons, he and Ferrari evolved together, turning compromise into dominance. By 2000, the car finally spoke Schumacher's language and the titles flowed. Adaptation became empire. Contrast that with Fernando Alonso's McLaren years. In 2007, the car was quick, but the philosophy clashed with Alonso's late braking instinct. Hamilton, then a rookie, thrived in it. Alonso fought against it, lost rhythm, and ultimately lost his place at the team. His genius remained, but the machinery never harmonized. Adaptation became exile. Even Ayrton Senna faced it. In his Lotus years, he drove cars with turbo engines so savage they punished throttle application like a sledgehammer. Senna learned to dance on the edge, lifting where others stamped, feathering where others crashed. When he arrived at McLaren in 1988, the Honda-powered MP4/4 gave him what he craved, and his adaptation was rewarded with dominance. Hamilton's story sits at that crossroads. Like Schumacher, he has the resilience to adapt across seasons, teaching himself to reprogram instincts built over decades. But like Alonso, he risks losing too much ground in the meantime. And unlike Senna, the 2026 Ferrari is not guaranteed to be the perfect fit. The cliffhanger is this. History shows that adaptation arcs can make or break legacies. The question is whether Hamilton has the runway, in races, in energy, in patience, to see his adaptation turn into empire, or whether time runs out before the car ever bends back toward him. Inside the Ferrari garage, Hamilton's alien style isn't just a technical puzzle, it's a political equation. Because adaptation doesn't happen in isolation. It happens under the gaze of a team balancing loyalty to Charles Leclerc with the investment of signing the sport's biggest name. On paper, Leclerc is Ferrari's anchor, 6 seasons deep, fluent in the team's language, and 46 points ahead in the standings. His radio at Monza on lap 42 was calm, almost routine. Rear grip consistent, can push more. Compare that to Hamilton's transmission just 4 laps earlier, still unstable mid-corner, struggling to trust the rear. 2 drivers, same car, entirely different narratives. For the engineers, that gap is more than words. It shapes development direction. And then there's Riccardo Adami. Hamilton's race engineer at Ferrari is competent, but he is not Bono. At Mercedes, Peter Bonington had 12 years of coded language, shared instinct, and emotional calibration with Hamilton. Adami is still building that relationship, and the difference shows. Where Bono might have reassured, "You're still on target, mate," Adami offers clinical updates, leaving Hamilton to manage doubt himself. Over 24 races, that absence of emotional cushioning amplifies the stress of adaptation. Fred Vasseur faces the real balancing act. Does he design Ferrari's 2026 project around Leclerc's comfort zone? A continuation of the philosophy Leclerc has mastered? Or does he pivot toward Hamilton's natural style, banking on the 7-time champion's ability to deliver if the car speaks his language? Either choice risks alienating one of the most valuable assets in the grid. And politics doesn't end at the garage doors. Sponsors, media, and fans weigh in. Hamilton's global pull is enormous. Ferrari signed him not just for lap times, but for legacy. If he remains visibly uncomfortable, questions grow louder. Is Ferrari wasting its golden signing, or is Hamilton unable to bend the twilight of his career into Maranello's mould? The cliffhanger is this. Ferrari can't serve 2 masters forever. Eventually, the Scuderia must decide whose driving style dictates its design future. And when they choose, the driver left behind may find adaptation is no longer an option. It's an ultimatum. The 2026 reset is not just another regulation change. For Hamilton, it is the final roll of the dice in a career defined by timing. He left McLaren just as their decline began. He joined Mercedes at the dawn of the hybrid era, and now he has staked his Ferrari move on the promise that a new rule set will bend the sport back toward him. If Ferrari interprets the regulations through Hamilton's lens, lighter chassis, responsive front end, stable rear platform, they may unlock a package that restores his natural instincts. The telemetry would no longer show a driver reprogramming himself lap by lap. It would show the Hamilton of old, decisive on entry, relentless on exits, a champion dictating pace rather than chasing it. But if Maranello doubles down on continuity, designing around Leclerc's comfort with instability, trusting the man who has carried their hopes for half a decade, Hamilton may find 2026 feels no less alien than 2025. And unlike Schumacher, he doesn't have 4 seasons to wait. Every race from here is measured against legacy, not just lap time. Meanwhile, rivals aren't standing still. McLaren's simulator data already points toward a chassis optimized for late braking aggression, built for Norris's instinctive style. Red Bull, even under regulatory upheaval, are rumoured to be banking on active aero mastery to maintain their straight-line advantage. Mercedes, the team Hamilton left behind, are quietly preparing a leaner car designed for stability, the very trait Hamilton craves. This is the crossroads. If Ferrari gets it right, Hamilton's story could pivot from struggle to redemption, ending his career not as a man bent to an alien philosophy, but as one who bent Ferrari back toward glory. If they get it wrong, the alien label may stick, remembered not as a testament to adaptability, but as a symbol of misalignment in the final chapters of a legend's career. Hamilton's adaptation curve is proof of both his genius and his discomfort. He is fast enough to rewire himself lap by lap, resilient enough to claw back tenths others would surrender. But the mathematics tell a harsher truth. Those lost Fridays and compromised Saturdays are bleeding points Ferrari cannot afford. And history reminds us that champions who spend too long adapting risk watching their window close before the car ever fits. So here is the question. Is Ferrari brave enough to design 2026 around Hamilton's style? Or will they double down on Leclerc's stability and force their newest icon to keep living in the alien zone? And with just months before the first prototype laps, the urgency is real. Because while Hamilton dreams of a car that feels like home, McLaren and Red Bull are already shaping machines to suit their stars.